Good afternoon, everyone. So we're now live on, I think, both Zoom and Facebook. So I hope that people, once they start filing in, would be comfortable, and then we can start with our usual demographics check. So as usual, if you're already inside the room, please do not hesitate to go on the comments and go on the chat, and then tell us how your day is going so far. And I'm pretty sure that people are very, very excited to see what we have in store for everyone. Okay. And I have here first is Maribel. Maribel sent to us, good afternoon, Lawrence, and to the rest of the panelists, coming in loud and clear. That's very good to hear. To Cliff, thank you, Cliff. Hello, PSTD, feeling great here in Pampanga. So we have people already from Pampanga. Okay. And then
Oh,
for
from
the
Pampanga.
rest who are here, please do not forget to switch your chat options or your chat to from all panelists to all panelists and attendees, because we also want your peers and the other attendees to read your greetings or perhaps your questions. So we can still see some of the people who are sending to all panelists. There you go. So hello, Joy. Joy is from Mindanao Power Corporation in Zamboanga. And then we also have one, Mary from Cebu City. So as usual, no, we're expecting a lot of people across the country to be very active in our Learn from Home uh, sessions. Let's continue with our demographic check. So we're seeing people coming in from Legazpi, also from Cebu, another one from Batangas, Aldrin, is from Puerto Princesa City. We'd also like to know what your particular role is in your respective organizations. If you are a trainer, if you're working in human resources, or if you're managing the talent development function, as we always expect from our demographics. And then recently, we've had an influx of secondary and tertiary educators, professors, and teachers. So if you are one of them, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat so that our speakers and later on our moderator would be able to identify what particular points to highlight in their presentation. Okay, so I'm seeing here we have a quality analyst from TCS Clark. This one came from Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia. Don is a senior talent development specialist coming in from Quezon City. So I hope that you can change, Don, your settings from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. So while your comments and your entries in the chat box are being read by our speakers, by our peers, and our moderators, let me move on to the next part of our slide, which is basically to give you again an overview of the objectives of Upland Hope. Why are we doing this? Why Philippine Society for Talent Development has been active
Lawrence,
for the past, yes, please.
Lawrence,
John.
sorry, can we go back for the poll para at least we get to have them respond to it? Hold on.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna reclaim host tapos I'm going to use the poll.
No worries. Okay.
So I'm gonna launch this one. Okay, can you see the poll now?
Yes,
Yes.
there.
Cool, sige. So, yeah, so people can respond to this already in the next minute. We have now 125 people.
Okay, so that's a lot. We're expecting, usually we have an average of more than 200 inside the Zoom room. And a lot of times we were able to cap out the 500 participants. So again, we have 3 particular questions for our demographics check. These are some of the things that I've already asked in the past minute. What type of talent development practitioner are you? Where are you calling from? And the third one is this your first time in PSTD Learn from Home series? Yeah, and I can see the number of people filing in. So we would like to say hi to everyone, not only in Zoom, but also to the active people in Facebook Live. So I'm seeing here, majority still would be a combination of managers and executives in the HR profession and soft skills trainers. We're also seeing educators, another significant 13%. And of course, 27% would be others. So we have actually attracted a number of practitioners and professionals that are outside the usual audience of PSTD. Where are you calling from? The vast majority would still come from Luzon, with more or less a tie from Visayas in Mindanao, each with 4%. And is this your first time in PSTD Learn from Home series? We have a majority, 82%, who answered no. So maraming suki na dito that are always here, that have always been supporting PSTD since the first time that we did our Learn from Home series. Okay, let's move on now to the second one. So as I was saying earlier, I would like to give you a very quick preview of the main objectives of Upland Hope. The first one is to support the Philippine learning community as they cope with the crisis. So this is very timely because just recently, especially if you're residing in Metro Manila, we've now moved to the modified ECQ. So as we move along, we're still hoping that majority of the topics that we have in line would still help you to cope in this new normal. And then the second one is, of course, to sustain PSTD in its operations. So you can see there, help now and gain later. That applies not only to PSTD, but to everyone who is in attendance. Because, of course, when you are attending here, you not only help yourself, but you help your organizations by upskilling. And then you will surely be able to upskill yourself and be able to help your organization in the long run. Moving to the next one. So we have here the Learn from Home series. So I'm pretty sure you're aware of the majority of the things that we've ran for the past 3 months. And if you go to our Facebook page, you can follow us there. Just go to the search bar and type in Philippine Society for Talent Development, and you're going to see one page and one group. So the best way for you to get to view some of our past webinars, Learn from Home sessions, would be to go and follow, like our page, go to videos tab, and then you can see majority of our sessions were recorded and you can view them anytime you want. Okay, and then this coming Saturday, we're going to have our Chillax with PSTD. So we've been running this for, I think, around 4 or 5 times already. And then the Chillax session would be the culmination of that particular Learn from Home week, where we do a more or less chill conversation and provide actionable insights, usually conversed in Taglish, to talk about some of the salient points that were presented for both the free and paid webinars of the week. So we have Luz Mercurio, the CEO of Strategic Learning and Professional Development Consulting, as the moderator for our 2 Chillax panelists, Herminio Famatigan Jr. of Maybank Philippines and Chester Kahukom Uy of Mond Nisin Corporation. Also, outside of our Learn from Home series in Chillax with PSTD, we also have paid webinars. We have 2 upcoming ones, Mentoring in Times of Crisis. This is to be conducted by the Learning and Development Consultant and Principal Partner of CICP, Maribel Aglipay. And then on June 30, we also have How to Manage Emotions Through Change and Transitions, June 30, by Luz Mercurio. What I mentioned as you're going to see Luz this coming Saturday. So if you want to see how good Luz is, because Luz is really good, feel free to drop by at the free Chillax this Saturday and then sign up for the June 30 webinar. Are you all ready? Can I go to the chat very quickly because I will be moving malapit na to the introduction of our moderators and then, of course, to our speakers. So let's go now to the membership benefits. Of course, I mentioned earlier that doing the Learn from Home, the objectives of Learn from Home is 2-pronged. The one is to help everyone, the broad practitioners, and then the other one is also to help you further upskill yourselves as talent development professionals. So now we are offering this particular promo where in the past when you pay your annual subscriptions to PSTD, you only get 12 months membership. But for this particular season, we're going to be extending it to 15 months membership. So if you're going to register up until June 15, so we still have 13 days up until the end of this promo. Our membership rate for individuals would be 2,800 only, and the total value of the freebies included would be 4,000. If you're a corporate member, if you're going to represent your corporation, that's going to be 5,600 only, and the freebies would be valued at a total of 8,500. So we have a lot of things in store for you, and we're very excited to welcome everyone formally to the PSTD family. Okay, so now you can for all of the things outside of Facebook, if you want to know more about our board of directors, board of trustees, and our past events, you can just go to www.pstd.org. And now, I'm pretty sure that you are excited, no, to learn from our speakers and of course from our moderator. And for this particular week, our theme is capability and capacity building for the new normal. And the first learn from home session for the week is industry winners and losers, what is needed to propel the PH, the country, back to economic growth. And I would like to present to you now our moderator for this afternoon. He is no stranger to learn from home moderation, as I am sure you've seen him in our past LFH and Chillax sessions. He is currently the head of HR Consulting of Nomura Research Institute, Manila, and the Programs Committee Head of PSTD. So fellow practitioners and talent development, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator, no other than June Roy. Good afternoon, June. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another exciting learning session from PSTD. Now, before we start, and to ensure smooth conduct of this webinar, please pay attention to some of the reminders. So attendees will be in mute first to manage the flow of information. For questions later on, you can use the Q&A tab of Zoom, not the chat. And you can use chat tab for your comments or inputs. Now, when can you put in your questions and chat? Instead of just waiting for the end of the session, you can at any time, if you have questions or comments, you can actually send them via the Q&A and the chat. And we have our speakers, and including myself, to watch over those questions. And if we can answer them, we will answer them right away via chat. And for the other questions, we will do that at the end of the session. And only for Zoom login participants who stayed at least 40 minutes will be issued certificates. So with that, let's start. Now, as Lawrence mentioned, for the last 2 months, PSTD has offered webinars on a broad range of topics intended to help our talent development and HR professionals to navigate and thrive in what is called new normal. One thing we haven't covered though, and which we will today, is the economic impact of the pandemic. Ngayon, bilang HR or talent development, ano naman ang kinalaman ng economics sa talent development? Baka naman mag-nosebleed ako sa mga numbers kapag pinag-usapan na yung economics. Don't worry, because economics is part and parcel of our daily lives, and our speakers made it sure that they will explain it in the language that we will understand. So as individuals, lahat naman tayo affected economically. So yung pagkakaintindi natin, our understanding of economic information will enable us to prepare for eventualities, especially if we come to know who are the winners and the losers of this pandemic. And as talent development or HR professionals, it is our duty to help our organizations become more resilient, not only emotionally, but also economically as well. So how do we help our leaders in our company become more resilient in a business way? So that's part of our duty. So if we understand the economic implications, mas malaki yung magagawa natin na pagtulong. And as managers or decision makers, you certainly need economic data to make that decision. Kapag ikaw naman ay nasa academe, and I see that some of you here are from that sector, I'm sure that we know how affected our students and their parents are. So mas mailalagay natin sa tamang konteksto yung pagtuturo natin. So the questions that we will answer today are basically two. One is, economically speaking, who are the industry winners and losers because of this pandemic? Now, pag alam natin yung industry winners and losers, yung epekto ng economic impact ng pandemic, how will this information help ourselves? How will this information guide us in becoming effective in our professional roles? And eventually, how can we contribute to propel back our country to economic growth? And today, we are fortunate to have with us two distinguished experts from ATR Asset Management, or ATRAM. which is one of the leading and multi-awarded asset and wealth management companies in the Philippines. So clearly, our speakers today, ladies and gentlemen, have a way of looking at today's situation and uses it to achieve positive results. What information do they look at? Paano kaya nila ito ginagamit? And will the same approach that they do as individuals, as learning and development expert of others, and as decision makers, will they also work for us? So let's get things started with our first speaker from ATRAM. His name is Jose Lacson, or Jomer. Jomer is the head of macroeconomics and ESG research for ATR Asset Management. Prior to his position, he was the head of equities research at ATRAM. He has over 20 years of research experience in equities, finance, and economics spent with various global and local institutional securities brokerage firms. He enjoys, obviously, his sharing his experience and expertise in these fields as a university professor and PhD candidate in economics. So without much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Jose Lacson.
Okay. Yep. Hi, Jomar, you may now share your screen.
Jomar, you may now share your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just get my...
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
Oh, good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're just waiting for it to load up.
Yep.
Okay.
Still loading.
All right, let me just get my... yeah, okay, so Casey, thank you for that kind introduction, Mr. June. And I guess you're giving ATR Asset Management the opportunity to speak to the members of the Philippine Society for Training and Development. So for ATRAM, we hope and pray that you all are safe while you're watching this webinar. Just to share something personal with you, I believe that if this organization, the STD, was existing more than 40 years ago, my mom would most likely be a member of this organization. She was a training professional for a government bank many decades ago. So when she retired, she turned to freelance training gigs to help pay the bills. So you can actually say that her career in training put me through high school. So training, I know, is tough work, and it can be even tougher during a crisis such as this. And that is what we'll be talking about today, economic crisis, at least in part, how to understand it, and maybe how to take a different perspective to the economy and the crisis that we're in. Okay. So.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to show you some data to give everyone sort of an update on the COVID situation. So this is not economics, it's raw, and I guess you could say it's unofficial health data that may be relevant in later slides. No? So just to be sure, we understand I'm not an epidemiologist, okay? So I cannot make any conclusions about flattening the curve or when will this pandemic be over. But just looking at the chart, so the chart to my left is the number of tests that have been conducted since April. And the gray line there is the percentage of COVID positives to tests based on like a lag of 2 days. So what it just tells you is that we've been conducting more tests. And it seems that the number of positives is relatively consistent at around 465 for the past 7 days. And also for the past 7 days, We've been doing roughly about 8,000 tests. So my best guess to its meaning is really that there's local transmission of the virus. It's still ongoing despite the ECQ, but it's also not rising, which may mean that the quarantine was effective in keeping it under control. Now, the second chart to the right is the bed capacity. Okay, so it shows that there's a 65% availability rate, meaning if you need to go to the hospital, there will be a bed waiting for you for if you're a COVID positive patient. Okay, so again, what this means is that there's enough capacity to absorb new cases now that the GCQ is in effect, and there's now more people movement in the economy. Okay, so given this backdrop, what can we tell you about the economy? Well, I'm hoping after this webinar, that, excuse me, you'll be able to take home these conclusions of our research. Firstly, that the ECQ itself is an economic shock. Okay, and based on the latest numbers from economic numbers, the impact is bad. And unfortunately, given what's been disclosed, the economic numbers will continue to even worsen. Okay, and will continue to be felt in the economy. But this, like any other crisis that we've been through, whether you're in 80s, 90s, past decade, this is something that we can survive. And that is the first priority of everybody, survival. Okay. Secondly, the key to survival is consumption. Okay. So hindi yun yung para kumain. And that's part of the solution. But we will show you how important consumption is to the economy. So it will also give you a better appreciation of the economic plan by the government. A lot of criticisms against the government, but anyway, we need to know what they plan to do. Okay, and critical to that is consumption. Lastly, because of the pandemic, because of this economic crisis, how we consume, whether it's a good or a service, it's going to change. So as investors, we need to sort of anticipate these changes. We have to be forward-looking and try to find opportunities in them. Now, we'll share some of these insights with you. As I think Lawrence and June had mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about sectors that benefit from this kind of environment. So before, I think June kind of warned you a little bit about yung na baka daunting ng konti, yung economics. But when I tried to explain GDP to my mom, actually, and she's quite old, iiwanan ako niyan. She just walk away. Trying to get to people lang for product, wala na. So let me try to explain the economy in 60 seconds. Okay. So GDP, okay, stands for gross domestic product, which means that this is the value of goods and services produced here in the Philippines. So location kind of matters. In other words, this is the sales ng Philippines Inc. If you were to think of Philippines as a business, ito yung measurement ng sales niya. And the chart to my right, itong real GDP growth, shows that quarterly sales ng Philippines Inc. since 2001, it's been pretty good for the past 20 years. There were a few quarters in 2009 that were quite bad because of the global financial crisis. Okay, but in general, maganda yung sales sa Pilipinas. Now, the diagram to my left, to my right, is the way I would put it is that you have to look at the economy always as having two sides. So my analogy here is that the economy is like a coin. So having two sides, supply and demand, two sides of the coin. And we distinguish the economy in terms of real and asset, again, two sides. When we say real, it's Jobs, cars, supermarkets, airplanes, everything, even us. They were part of that real economy. Yung asset economy, yan yung medyo intangible. Yung money, stocks, stock market, bond market, property, kasama na dyan. Anything that's like wealth related is the other side of the coin. So you have this coin, which has two sides, and what you need to do is spin it. You put it in a table, iikot yung parang trumpo, no? Yung coin, right? So the faster it spins, the more valuable the coin gets. So if we spin the 25 centavo, if it goes faster, it becomes a 1 peso coin. Magic, no, parang ganun. But actually, that's the economy getting bigger because we're moving fast. Now, if I were to look at quite clearly, there are 4 prices. No? Yung inflation, interest rates, wages, at peso-dollar rate. Prices lahat yan. Okay. So, why prices? Kasi yung inflation, price of consumer goods. Yung interest rates is the price of money. That's the cost of money. Wages, of course, the price or the cost of labor. And the peso-dollar rate or the exchange rate is the price of the currency. So you have to think of it as a magnet or magnets surrounding that coin. And the way the magnets move, and they're moving, it makes the coin spin faster. So if they move the right way, bibilis yung coin. If they move the wrong way, humihina yung spin ng coin. So as you can see now with GDP growth, we've been spinning quite fast. So all the prices have been moving in favor of the economy over the past, at least past 10 years. Now what the ECQ has done is sort of like stop that spinning. Okay, so that's the shock. So now yung 1 peso, because it's now back to 25 centavos. So that's what's sort of what's happened. So I'd like to take the first poll to this. No? Kasi at the end of the day, it's all about expectations rin, eh. So the first one is this. Do you expect your company's monthly sales to blank in 2021 to either 1, recover or grow better than 2019 levels? 2, it will recover, yeah, pero flat lang, pareho lang siya ng 2019. Or 3, not recover from 2019 levels. Now, if you're an individual, treat yourself as a company na rin, parang it's a personal business, and you have to think of your income as a revenue. So you can ask whether you're an individual or a company. We're part of the real economy. So what do you expect things to be next year? Not 2020, kasi out na yun, eh. You have to understand lang what you have to create an expectation of what's going to happen next year.
All right, so please cast your votes.
Will we see the results?
Yeah.
Or?
Lawrence, you can launch the, yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
There you go.
Okay, so looking at this, it seems that consensus for the audience is actually this is very good. We're not bearish. If we had more not recovering, we would be very bearish about 2021. So the fact that we're 45% na magre-recover but flat means, I think for me, may optimism in the economy. If you were to represent the economy today, consumers like yourselves are actually, very optimistic. And this is actually good news when I look at it. Okay, thank you. Moving on, since we now have an idea of what GDP is, and you have already a forecast of, to a certain degree, yung growth ng sales, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. No? What's inside GDP? So inside GDP are these four components. No? And it's really when we look at GDP, it's not just about revenues. No? For economists, revenue is equal to expenses. So one side of the economy produces, the other side of the economy spends. So what this chart shows you, this pie chart, is GDP as spending. So who spends? So there's consumers like you and me, and then yung firms when they invest, and we call it capital formation, yung technical term dyan, but it's actually investment. So when we invest, that's a form of spending. And then the government spends also. So whenever it builds roads, hires teachers, all of that forms part of GDP. And then lastly, yung spending with the rest of the world. So whenever you import yung Nike sneakers, I guess, it forms part of spending as well, okay, as it comes in. And when the rest of the world buys stuff from us in export, that's also spending. But if you look at the chart, the main message here is that the bulk of our economy is really consumption. So it's tayo yung nagdadrive ng economy. So what's inside our basket or our cart whenever I'm not sure if I was able to explain the economy in 60 seconds. It looked more like 2 minutes to me, but it's a tough job, no? So you can see here that on the chart to the left, food and beverage as a component is kind of the biggest, 42%. But the other side of that, yung non-food, discretionary, as we would call, is bigger as a whole when you combine it, 58%. So if you break that 58%, makita niyo sa chart on the right, non-food, makita mo yung malalaking items. Household and clothing, 10%. Transportation, 15%. Recreation, 4%. Ito, restaurants, I can tell you, for the past 20 years, lumalaki to. This used to be much lower. But restaurants right now spending 8% na ngayon. If I'm not mistaken, it was something like 4% in 2010. So nag-double na yung kanyang percentage. And then the miscellaneous part, no? So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. And this breakdown I show in the next slide, no? And this is more detailed, but I've separated in terms on the left are the essentials if you want to look at it. You need to have food, you need to have your beverage. Some people, they need the tobacco and beer. It's a big component. Of course, yung utilities, yung kuryente, tubig, renta, and health. So these are the essential stuff. And the non-essential, discretionary, because we can choose to spend this more or less. Transpo, communication, education. Asian culture, restaurants, and miscellaneous. We're watching the previous slide. Okay. So this is consumption, and just to show you how important consumption is. The former CEO of Unilever actually said it best on how important consumption is. So the question I have for you, the consumer dictates whether we are in business or not, and it's coming from a company, one of the biggest global manufacturing companies, global consumer manufacturing companies in the world. So are we in business? So this is where I take a second poll. I'd like to answer from the audience. No? We have 6 questions for you. Okay. So what is your cart going to be like in 2020? So let's see. For transportation, over the next 6 months, for travels to the office and or out of town, you expect to use your car versus the usage last year to be either, or we're going to use it more often, same use, less often. And of course, we have to assume here na the quarantine will be, the restrictions will be relaxed over time. communication. So this is with regard to your mga data plan nyo, no? So whether for Globe or Smart or a new player, do you plan to upgrade? Are you happy with your current data plan? Kung upgrade ka, or two, downgrade, okay? Or don't do anything, meaning just keep the plan as it is. Third question is on education. Actually, I have two questions for education. So for the second half, and this pertains to those who have children in school or maybe in school themselves, do you expect tuition fees to be reduced, stay the same, or do you think tuition fees are gonna go up? The second question on education as an expense. So if you have children in school, would you consider homeschooling at this point or strictly distance learning? Because I know that there's a move by the president right now for no face-to-face. But going forward, do you still think na push yung kids to actually go to school physically? Okay, so recreation culture, I know you're probably thinking movies, but actually it's your smartphone. Okay, it's been the consumer basket. This consumer basket actually takes into the purchase of a smartphone or a telephone or a mobile phone as consumption. So do you plan to buy a smartphone or maybe even a tablet, for yourself or as a gift for another person this year or the remainder of the year? So restaurant and miscellaneous goods and services, if you're going to look back from last year, do you expect to eat out more often in a restaurant? Oh, sorry, when it comes to eating out, going to the salon, barber shop, or yung food spa, food spa dyan. Do you think that you're going to go the same number, meaning just for the second half, same number of times, less often or more often? Because marami nang gusto magpagupit, right? I mean, even I want to get a haircut these days. But yeah, so how do you plan to spend that? I mean, spend for that. Do you want to be there more often? Okay.
All right. I think, Jomar, in a few seconds, Lawrence can show the result. There you go.
Okay. Cool. So travel seems to be medyo bearish, if you look at it, less often, 44% feel that they're gonna travel less often, whether it's to the office or maybe even going out. So bulk of it is actually hindi air transportation, to give you an idea of what the consumer basket is. Hindi siya air transportation or even maritime. Bulk of it is actually commute. At saka yung personal car use, So plan usage, do nothing. May mag-upgrade. Okay, so yeah, I guess this is where we're now going to tie this up with the sectors that's going to be benefiting. But you can see there's a lot of people who want to upgrade their data plans.
Jomar, this might be correlated with the increase in work from home arrangements,
Yes.
siguro, no?
Yeah. Agree, 100%. Third question was tuition fees. You expect them to be reduced. Okay. It's fair expectation. I think we'll agree with that as well. Because it's hard to justify yung fees, I think. And the demand may not be there. And true enough, the demand may not be there because there's homeschooling that's being considered. So this might actually force tuition fees to come down. And for the smartphone, wow, 50-50, parang gano'n, no? Sa 49-51%. So in terms of recreation, actually, we may actually see this as, if this is a good indicator, we may actually see some growth in recreation for 2020. And then lastly, sa restaurant and miscellaneous. Okay. So less often. I guess it's because of the restriction that might be being considered. No? And there's a fear. And again, this is also part of the trends that we're seeing. Good, good. This is very good data. No?
Very insightful.
Yes, very insightful. Okay. Okay, so we can, so those were expectations. So how do you compare to reality? So I'm going to show you what happened in the first quarter. Like I told you, things got bad, right? Eto. This is consumption in the first quarter. You can see that drop. It's almost flat. So again, what drove consumption down? Okay. What has the ECQ done to consumption? It's the lowest it's been since 2009. And even 2009 may 1% growth. So it was that bad first quarter. And we only had 15 days of ECQ at that time. And there was just Taal eruption. And we can see here the breakdown for the first quarter that what drove the decline was tobacco or alcohol. Could partially be two things. No? May taxes kasi. And second is the ban on alcoholic beverages. No? There's a decline in transport because of the restrictions, things that we expect. Communication was positive. And then restaurants and hotels, the worst hit, apart from alcohol and tobacco. So hotels really got hit hard in the first quarter, and it's just the first quarter. Medyo unusual ako for me, no? Yung furnishings and household wide declined 7%. Because technically speaking, parang dapat hindi pa 15 days pa lang eh. Your household expenses mo should still be theoretically intact a little bit, no? But it's there. So it's kind of hard to explain, but the data does show. Okay. So does this match the beneficiaries? No? So these are at the start of the ECQ. There's this list of beneficiaries and sectors that were at risk in the short term. When we say short term, parang 12 months yan, no? Yung horizon. No? And healthcare is clearly one of the top. No? Food and retail, because you have to go eat pa rin, go to the supermarket. Telecommunications, e-commerce like Zoom, and agriculture. At risk because of the quarantine, tourism, aviation, automotive, because you can buy the cars, and the data has been coming out na negative na yung sales ng auto, construction, real estate, all this. But
Jomar, just to clarify, no? Sorry. Based on our branding, so tama ba? The beneficiaries, these are our winners, and those at risk, these are the potential losers, ano?
Right. And we can see that in the first quarter, yes. And we can see part of that is being validated by the first quarter. But it's in severity, nakita natin sa first quarter, mas malakas yung restaurant, di ba? Sila yung tamaan talaga.
Yes.
And that's what I'm pointing out, that the severity can be different from sector to sector. And the severity, when we have to look at it, okay, we have to look at it in terms of three metrics, no? Whether in employment, severity in employment, severity in demand or volume, and prices. No? So sa oil and gas, it's volume, demand, at saka yung prices. Okay, kasi yung prices ng oil, sobrang bagsak talaga eh. Walang eroplano eh. So nobody's buying your fuel. Okay, so case points are airlines, so we see the effects of employment and demand. Already.
Jomar, sorry, if I may, very quick question lang from our participant, clarification lang. So when you say healthcare, is it the medical practice, hospital operations, or does it also include medicine consumption?
Yes. Yes, it includes those.
It includes medicine.
All right. Right.
So
institutional, meaning those.
You heard the response. It is included.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jomar.
Yeah. Thank you. So, depending on the severity, the way you would look at companies and this is how does it affect its sales growth versus margin. So some may actually have good sales because of the demand side, malakas, with beneficiaries. But we don't know about the cost. So posible na nag-move against it. So it's not 100% guaranteed that you're benefiting, but you're profitable. Okay, so it kind of depends pa rin on that. Okay. So our own forecast, we're a bit more bearish, no? So if you look at the chart, this chart on the right, our forecast is gonna get really bad. It's gonna be horrible actually for the second quarter in terms of GDP growth. No? So we're still in the second quarter. Okay. But it's gonna get better going into 2021. So our own view, and I think this sort of like corresponds with your own forecast, is that we should approach, this one should approach 2019 levels of GDP or sales by the end, towards the end of 2021. Okay, and what's gonna get hit if you're just look at this for this year in terms of spending, kita nyo na consumption is gonna be bad. Capital formation, which is investments, really bad. Kasi we've talked to some of the companies and they're really pulling back on their own planned investments. Okay, and that's corresponding to which sectors? Industry, manufacturing, yan, medyo pull back sila. And for the first time in a long time, services, may pullback rin yan for 2020. So, but all of this is kind of predicated on the pricing numbers below here. Sorry. So we did talk about the magnets that are spinning the economy. And we have two of these. Our precision here is that the reason why maka-recover tayo, because one, inflation is going to be low. So it will allow to preserve yung incomes. Although nawawala tayo ng income, yung ability ng bawat piso na ginagamit natin to buy kind of gets some benefit from low inflation. And then yung peso dollar rate, we're expecting it to be stable around 51.50 to 52. So that stability allows us a bit to grow, no? Mahirap pag masyado malaki movements sa mga prices. So we expect it to be stable. Okay. So apart from the prices, the expectation sales, it's also predicated on that the government will do something about this problem. And the former US president, si Ronald Reagan, back in the 80s, he did say that government does not solve problems, it subsidizes them. It's related to another quote, no? If it moves, tax it. If it keeps on moving, regulate it. But if it's not moving, subsidize it. Well, consumption isn't moving, so we need to subsidize it. Okay, and that's what we kind of expect them to do. And the strategy, there are four things that are going to happen. No, one is the social amelioration program. Ito yung ayuda na sinasabi nila na you subsidize, you give money directly to the vulnerable sectors of the economy. Second is build program. No? So hopefully these two will help. Well, one will help keep consumption up, and second, provide employment. So if you're employed, then you can consume. Okay. Now in Congress, there's now yung Philippine Economic Stimulus Act. No, I think they're proposing about 1.2 trillion pesos of over the next 3 years. Na hindi pa yun done. It's still in Congress. They did the second reading, na pass na yan. So we need one more, and that's to go to Malacanang. And then there's CREATE, which is another name for that tax reform. So what it's going to do is reduce the corporate income tax. Now what you notice is the second, yung dalawa, yung tong PESA at saka yung CREATE. They're meant to provide an environment for companies to continue to employ and invest. Kasi ang kinakatakutan ng gobyerno, kahit mabigyan ko ng pera yung consumers, if the private sector will not employ people, then mawawala rin yung, magdi-dissipate pa lang, parang yung binato ko na in stimulus will just dissipate, mawawala lang yan. So the private sector has to jumpstart, no? Which brings us back to our coin model. No? Coin model of the economy. To jumpstart the economy, the government has to spend. Okay? And they can't do it alone. So you have to have both the firms and consumers working together, okay, to get over this hump quickly. So,
All right, Jomar, if I
so
may.
speed. Yes.
Sorry. These are really, really interesting topics. So just to check on the time, it's 2:48. So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So anyway, just to accelerate a bit. Speed is important. So whatever we need to understand that for us to get over this very weak period, we need to be very fast in our own decision making. No? And so I put this questions for you guys. Can we just run the poll? So what would be your objectives? So actually these are the short term and the long term or medium term forecasts for you guys. So what will be your objectives? So if in the second half of 2020, do you tend to just recover your cash position, you to increase it, more cash in your wallet? Or two, do you want to protect your wealth or your income? Or two, do you want to grow it? And it's the same question for the next 24 months. No? Bago lang dito yung time frame. Okay? And the point here is that how will we behave as consumers? Okay, how will we behave in the short term, 12 months? How will we behave 24 months? So if I were to look at this, okay, yan. Okay, so we have, looking at the results, many, the bulk, 47% is growth orientated, no? And even for the it's even stronger for 2021. So, which actually supports, I guess, my one of the assertions that we have, no, to take a look forward, no, how do we grow our business, or how do we grow our wealth? And we see these three trends: acceleration of the digital transformation, which we're now actually experiencing, with with Zoom, no? We're redesigning the business to become more digital. There's more mobility, more productivity at home. The second one is, what we've noticed is that there's a focus or a shift towards choosing sustainability. And when we say sustainability here, it means stuff like localization, meaning we want to hire workers that are within the community. Kasi nga kung magka-lockdown, it's a big risk, no? But if it's, and if your workers are working far, but now if you're within the community, I can still keep working. Third is a shift in consumer preference or priorities, no? And we've seen this now with the work from home. And when we're working from home, there's preference for home cooking, hindi na restaurant, no? Nagluluto lang sa bahay, and we're testing out recipes. And to answer partly yung question a while ago, there's a preference also for health and wellness. So yung mga products na yan are becoming more important because you want to make sure that if another pandemic comes or epidemic comes in, you're healthy enough to be able to go through that. Okay? And because of that, these are the sectors. No? So pretty much it's similar to what we had in the short term. But there are also some that we've noticed that are kind of different. No? For example, so, well, telecom, yes, we're seeing it already with the results of the survey. But office properties, because we need to have that social distancing, there's a view right now that there's more office space that needs to be taken because you can't be compact na eh. So may space na kailangan i-prepare, no? Logistics is because we're consuming more at home, no? We're delivered at Lazada, and even for kitchens or restaurants, they deliver to you na lang. So there's talk about cloud kitchens, meaning kitchens within the community that just sells to those within the vicinity and supported by storage. Fintech, yung Bitcoin, yan, lumalaki na yan. Saka yung use ng GCash. For manufacturing, it's stable. So I don't think there's a little disruption, but it will go back because bulk of our manufacturing is still food. So I think this will continue to be a stable sector. And then healthcare, personal, institutional, and it goes back to, it's not just hospitals. We're talking about also in wellness portion. If you can't go to the gym, you may still have a trainer, online training to get you. You might actually purchase gym equipment for the house. So these are sort of like what's been happening and may continue to happen. Okay. And which, I guess my last point is a quote for you before I hand this off to Marcy, is that the way we do things, no? So there's a final quote from JP Morgan: "You can't pick cherries with your back to the tree." Okay. And this is where walang chamba. You really need to be looking for the best investments and the best opportunities. So you have to look forward, not backward. Okay, so thank you. And I think Marcy will explain more about how this fits into ATRAM's.
Yeah, Jomar, thank you very much. So for everyone, if you have questions, you can send them via chat or Q&A, and Jomar will be also available to answer them. Now, let me quickly introduce Marcy, who will do the wrap-up with the remaining minutes. So Marcy Kohchet Chua is the Managing Director and Head of ATR Asset Management's Wealth Business. She is a certified Chartered Wealth Manager. And out of her recent 17 years, 26 in the banking industry. She is passionate about helping her clients navigate the world of investing. And her experience has shown that a partnership with clients, with experts, will always result to keeping investments safer. And here, to guide us on wrapping up the seminar and the webinar on what we can learn from this, what can we do with all of this sharing. So let me share the golden circle. So there you have it, Marcy.
Yeah, thank you very much, June. I'm just really going to take a few minutes because my intention is siguro to answer that question. Okay, so narinig ng ating viewers and participants what has been shared by Jomar. No? So this is how ATRAM works. We work with a lot of data. We always deal with the facts. It's never about our emotion and how we are personally experiencing certain services or goods, but it's really about taking a look at what the market, what the consumers, what the government is doing all together, and then we make decisions on where to invest. And that is important to highlight because in the same way, ang challenge namin ngayon sa participants natin this afternoon is, how are you going to use this data? So if you're looking for the answers of where you're carving your next step, whether it's your personal service that you're going to offer, if you are an employee and you're now looking for a way to actually create new sources of revenue for yourself, or you are a talent development person, a corporate person looking at what can you do for your employees. All of this has to be based on the concept of Simon Sinek's The Golden Circle, right? If you know what you can offer and how you are able to bring it already to your target market, the bottom line pa rin is, why are you doing it? So this COVID has actually given all of us an opportunity, including ATRAM, to really think about why are we doing the work that we do? Why are we offering clients investment advice? Why are we doing asset management. And the reason for that really is that it goes back to when we said we were going to exist. We're going to be nation builders. So the question to the viewers is, why do you do what you do? What is now the opportunity you're seeing that goes back to the purpose that you have set for yourself? And if that purpose is actually not yet clear, then this is the time that you should rethink the purpose. And if that is something that's going to be very clear to you, I'm going to leave with you an insight. Maybe this is now an opportunity for us not to think of the results. And usually from our point of view, ang mga conversation namin with our clients, yung mga kliyente namin na investors, ang tanong kagad, magkano? Magkano ang pwede kong kitain? Maybe it's not so much the result. Maybe the question now is about, are we doing the right decisions to get to the results? So are we picking the right clients? Are we picking also the right companies to invest in? So the question also for you is, are you in the right place? Are you also doing the right things? Are you going for sustainability, for resilience, for reliability? Kasi po, yan ngayon ang opportunity natin to now rethink and step how are we going to move forward. And it's fantastic that there's a lot of positivity from the audience this afternoon. Those answers about their financial goals, they kept saying that they want to grow. Then the question is, kung hindi ka pa nag-grow, anong gagawin mo differently now? Because you have an opportunity to rethink it. So I guess that's just what I wanted to leave as a note, June, and also for Lawrence. That is actually the kind of work that we do. We are not traditional finance people. Maybe in the banks, the discussions on wealth and investing is a little bit different. But ours is really always about partnering and understanding in-depthly what is the why for our clients. And in the same way, we would love to be able to open our doors and have those kinds of conversations to your viewers this afternoon. Thanks a lot, June.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcy. And that's a nice way of wrapping it up in three powerful questions: why, how, and what. And just to wrap it before we go for the Q&A, so I want to thank Jomar also for all those details. And what I can say is that, you know, if for HR professionals, for those in the academe, talent developers, it's also important that we are aware of the economic impact of what's going on, because by then we can know what we need to do, how we do it, and the bigger reason of why we are doing all these things. So I know it's already 3 o'clock, but if there are questions in the Q&A, we can entertain some of them. And yeah, so let me go quickly to these 3 questions. One, is it possible to have a copy of the presentation? So
Wow.
this is from Michael Angelo Londres. Is it shareable?
Yeah,
An executive summary, maybe?
I don't think we have a concern about sharing it. I mean, it's pretty much public information. Sige, so we'll share.
All right, so that's a good news. So that's for everyone. And then the survey, this is from LV, one of our officers. The survey shows a raging increase in technology and telcos, but we know our current provider is not able to deliver well enough. Is this also a good time to have foreign players, provider like Telstra and Verizon, to address our increasing need?
Jomar, would you like to take that?
Yeah.
I think you're on mute. Jomar's on mute.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Marcy. Yeah. Thank you. Well, the government already has some support for that in the third player. No, there's a regulation right now to welcome, and it's called Dito Telecom. But my understanding, there are some challenges for them because they're backed by China Telecom, and the China itself had just come out from its own lockdown, and they had difficulty in getting the engineers to come in. But to answer your question, it will help, I guess, because what we really need is capacity, because we know that unstable yung actually even today, right? We can feel some of that instability. And I think even there, kailangan magbago yung design ng network. Because before, we decided parang tawag, yung data sa mobile. But if we're working from home, fiber na yan eh. So baka yun ang the next move ng telecom companies na i-build yung infra for work from home. So more capacity for fiber. So that's where I think the potential competition or growth or expansion will be happening.
And tama ba, Jomar? More players can potentially level the playing field, no?
It can. Depends on the price kasi, di ba? At the end of the day, are you going to offer the service to us at a competitive price?
I see.
And yun ang promise yata ng government na mabaan yung cost and to make sure. But personally, di ba, we want to have stable connection. Yun yung mas
exactly. Okay, here's another question, two more. From Marilu Baron. I'm just concerning about education. It was in at risks. Is our government has assurance how our education program works? What do you think are the project proposal regarding this matter?
Okay, for education, I think the government has been quite transparent now. We're trying to just address yung crisis right now, no. Pero I guess yung mas tanong dyan yung strategic, yung long-term na implications sa education. So maybe in the short term, medyo may konti pang bugs na kailangan i-address. But I encountered a research paper on learning with others, okay, or network learning. So the way we were doing it right now, so webinar is a network kind of learning. And I think the basic conclusion there is the bigger the network and the higher the quality of the people in that network, the value of learning within that network is actually grows. And I think that's what educational institutions, schools, universities, high schools need to understand that. That's now where we need to take the school. Hindi lang yung classroom, but the network that we're now building.
All right. Here's a very timely and relevant question for the talent developers. What do you think about the recovery horizon for training and development providers? Do we expect to see little to no spending on training? This is from Sol Gonsalvo. Marami kasing tinamaan ng situation na gano'n, ano?
Marcy,
you'd like to, yes.
Yeah. You know, my answer to it is it's very likely that if there is any cuts on training, that will be temporary, very temporary. And the reason for that is there will be key realizations across all the companies on what needs to be relearned or even to learn differently. So the bigger question is, how can we as talent development experts also start rethinking and anticipating the new kinds of needs? How do we ourselves start thinking differently in a more innovative and creative way? Because if our starting point is to wait for the external to ask us to come in, then we're probably a bit too late. But if we are the ones who can influence the thinking on where the training and the learning and the development now needs to come into play so that the companies do not just survive this, but actually thrive in this situation, then you've done your part so much more. So that's the insight I want to put forward. And largely, this is not a theory specifically for Jomar and myself, because ganito na po mag-isip pati yung sarili po naming company, no? Just to let you know, we have been in a pure work from home setup even before the COVID started. So our mindset has been actually changed by that situation. The way we think, the way we operate, we always look for solutions now which are paperless. Paperless, non-face-to-face, etc. At dahil po iba kami mag-isip, nauuna po yung mga solutions. So in the same way, that is what I think would be very good for all talent developers to start thinking. Don't be the recipient. Be the leader. Take that first step to be an influencer. Take a look at where you believe you yourself can develop ahead and bring that forward where more people will actually be benefiting from that development.